And we're live! Yeah! At the last moment, I found out that I don't have a scene for adding a fourth camera or second camera on my side, so I had to do some magic. But also somehow Pasha's camera is too small. Yeah, it's fine now. Okay, so here we are, another iBookBinding live stream on another strange day. We went away from Saturday, so for the third time already, I think, or something like that. Anyway, Pasha, can you say something, because I need to test that sound comes from you.
Hi everyone. Hi Dimitris. Nice to see you.
Yeah, I think there should be sound there. If there are any issues, please tell us. So today we have something special. It's in the past 2 months we all the time have something special. We started with Tom McEwen and a live class. Then we also had something special recently. Well, besides the just talking about the Booker Prize bindings, which is always special. Well, whatever. But today we are revealing a binding that was made by Dimitris for iBookBinding, I guess. And we talked with Dimitris about this project a while ago, and I thought that. And I forgot to introduce our guest. Well, it's in the header. Sorry, our guest is Dimitris Koutsipetsidis, a Greek bookbinder who already had been a guest on our podcast and live stream at least a couple of times. Hi, Dimitris. Nice to have you here.
Hello, and thank you for having me again, guys.
Yeah, I've been completely thrown off by all this technical stuff that I had to do. But anyway, so yeah, we're here. And earlier in 2024, maybe was it even 2023?
I think it was 23. Yeah.
Yeah, 2023. We talked with Dimitris, and I shared with him my idea that I'd like to make it sort of a regular practice at iBookBinding to order a binding from. Well, we discussed it as like from young bookbinders, but Dimitris obviously is still young, but he's also a master bookbinder, I guess. So he isn't just starting, but so we discussed.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so. Closing to 20 years,
Yeah. Definitely not starting recently, but still young, and well. We wouldn't limit our scope, I guess. We'll see how it goes. We decided that iBookBinding and I would look for different bookbinders from different regions and countries to make a single binding, at least for now, every year, binding of a book that is related to bookbinding or book arts. So we chose a book, and I have a binding here. I haven't opened it yet. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen any photos of the binding. I don't know what Dimitris made with my book. We'll soon see what did happen. But it's very exciting for me, and I hope for Dimitris as well, because we plan to talk about the technical aspects of the binding as well, and the design process and everything. And Pavel also didn't see anything. Dimitris sent us some photos we are going to share with you during the process. Probably if we need
in a folder named "Finished Binding, Do Not Look."
Yeah. They haven't seen the photos either, so it's a surprise for everyone.
Yeah. So that's how we are going to go today, and yeah, as usual, I invite everybody to post your comments and questions if you have any questions to Dimitris as our main guest today. And also, if you are willing to share from where you are joining us, please post this, from which country, from which city, town, locality, hamlet, or whatever. Don't post your full address because we don't want to de-anonymize you. But also, if you could check the links in the description of this video, there are links to our social accounts. Please follow us. Please check our Patreon account. And there are links to Dimitris' Instagram and website. Please also subscribe to Dimitris if you haven't subscribed yet. But yeah, that's that. And we already have a comment from Peru. It's in Spanish.
Okay.
It's in Spanish, but I'll use
which I just translated, and it says, "Could you please enable subtitles?" And that's an interesting question. I don't know. Can you enable AI-generated subtitles for live streams? I think in recordings they do appear.
Yeah, let me see. Closed captions, no, not available. Yeah, sorry, but it doesn't.
Probably when
the subtitles will be
when it is uploaded
in
later.
a couple of days after the stream ended. So in a couple of days there will be video on our channel with the subtitles. Pasha, if you could reply, please do that. But anyway, so how do we start?
I guess we open the package.
Do we open the package, or do we talk first about the initial steps of the projects? Because you didn't go for the binding right away. You started with some repairs and stuff, because the book is from early 19th century. Early 19th
I think so. Yes, and I would also like to point out another thing as well, that during our initial conversation, I asked you, could you perhaps make it a small book, because I have a strong preference, and I have a few things to say about that after we see the binding.
So that's the book. In a box. So you can probably guess the size. I'm guessing that it's in the box because, once again, I didn't see it.
And you were kind enough, to oblige. But the book is a bit old, and it needed some repairs, though it wasn't in a bad state. It was just that taking it apart and binding it anew. In order to do that, you need to go through some, usually, even if the book is in good condition, there are some repairs required, which in most cases means reinforcing the spines of the sections with Japanese repair tissue.
Yeah. So the thing is that in the hurry I completely blanked out the full title of the book. Well, I guess I'd have to open it because it's I think it's called Book of Trades. Yeah,
correct.
And let me switch to a different view. I guess it's unboxing in the end.
Isn't it supposed to be really early for bookbinding manuals in English?
So it's not a manual per se. It just describes the profession, the trade in a synoptical way. And to tease a bit, I actually didn't base the design on the bookbinding trade. I based it on a different trade.
Yeah, because as the title sort of suggests, it's a book of trades, not only bookbinding. There are some other book-related trades listed and described in this book as well. So we'll look what's there. But yeah, Dimitris, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's go ahead.
That's what I do. So
just be careful with the knife from here on, and you can read that later. I didn't know we were gonna have an unboxing, so you can ignore it for now.
Okay. Is there? Oh, it's also sealed. I have a
Yes.
scissors for that occasion, so it should be better with scissors. You
I started sealing the packages after some tools I've sent to people.
Yeah.
They send me pictures that the package was stored somewhere with water, and it was dripping wet. So
Yeah.
Safety measure.
So you can see that I can show this relative size of the book. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. We use a different knife here.
It's like unpacking Christmas presents.
Yeah,
I think there's a couple more layers in there, or maybe 10. Do you even remember what size the original book was?
Yeah, I remember it pretty well. Okay. I could have probably torn it away, but whatever. So here we are. What's the
nothing. Just to protect the spine.
Oh, okay. So here's the size. Once again, I can show. You can already see something in the spine.
Mm.
So let's see.
Upside down?
Upside down, yeah.
There.
Book of Trades, yes.
Yeah, here it is. And the spine. And the box.
Reminiscent of those false books that you like. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
So here's the final size. Once again, I can show everyone. It's really miniature. Yes, luckily I had it on hand already when we discussed this project with Dimitris, and so.
Could you hold it with the covers open so we can get a view of the whole outer surface? Okay. Yes, that.
So.
Mm-hmm. So was it weaving that you took as an inspiration? Because
exactly,
it looks like parts of the loom with those
exactly. Yeah. It's supposed to represent the threads of a loom hanging tight from a curved surface with the use of weights. And I took a bit of a creative liberty there, because using weights to keep the threads tight, and especially, round or stone weights, was something that they did in antiquity.
And even before that, those are some of the earliest securely datable artifacts. So for like 6,000-7,000 years.
Exactly. But it looked nice in my mind, so I went with that.
But also, weaving sort of has a lot of influence on bookbinding as well. So
exactly,
also relevant to our topic.
Exactly.
Yeah. I forgot what was stated here. Avery Jane Miles, something, Boston 23, and then I don't know what. So yeah, here it is.
There you are.
Book of Trades, and the bookbinder engraving is right on the front of this book, 1807. It is sort of considered to be one of the first book that references bookbinding craft.
Really? Okay.
In England, in a sort of tutorial way. It's not a tutorial as Dimitris.
Yeah. No, it doesn't give instructions, but it describes the process in a bit of a detail.
Yeah. So as you can probably see, it's part 3. So it's not there are more of them, and I have only this one, and I think it was 200 euros or something like that. This book, so it's not the cheapest bookbinding book ever. And here are some other crafts described here: brickmaker, rope maker, weaver, stocking weaver, carpet weaver, ladies dressmaker, pin maker, needle maker, wire drawer, paper maker. We'll look at this one. Printer, bookbinder, calico printer. Also sort of relevant, I guess, to us and to our topic.
A bit, yeah.
Tin plate worker, brazier, button maker, cabinet maker, saddler, glass blower, cork cutter, and watchmaker. So, and this book is filled with engravings of these crafts. Here is the weaver, by the way. And which page is printer? Let me see. Paper maker is first, 64. So let's go to 64.
Oh, by the way, a particularity of the book, since you flipped it, it was a bit obvious. The paper changes. Half the book is printed in a different paper than the other half.
Okay.
There's a big section that's much darker and more foxed, and that shows that they used different papers, which is odd, but not that rare. I'm currently working on a 10-volume set, and half the books display something similar.
Interesting. I see some repairs here. Carpet weaver pages and something else. That was something you did, right? Or you with your colleague?
I think I drew my inspiration from what was it called? From inspiration struck when I was reading about the sock loom in particular. The way it described that they had to make an innovation in order to make it make producing them more efficient, and it was a very poor couple that had no money, no prospects, and they came up with a new kind of loom, and they flourished after that. But I sort of went through most of the professions described in the book, and the thing I didn't want to do was to just represent bookbinding tools or something. I wanted something a bit more abstract, as is my tendency in general. And the design, the end result is mostly classic, but it has a few modern touches, like, for example, the absence of spine bands. The vast majority of books, if you go, early 20th and earlier, the vast majority of books have spine bands. So this is, a bit of a twist, you could say.
Okay, so let's see the crafts. Here we have paper maker, also with an engraving. Then a few pages later, we have the printer. Where does it start? Over here, the printer. And here's the printer, really traditional printer, much more traditional than what they had in the 19th century. But, well, okay. And the next one is the bookbinder, but the engraving isn't at the beginning of the book, so there will be no engraving over here. And, calico printer. Do we have an engraving for that? Yeah, here it is.
And this looks in both cases like just before industrialization really came to the trades, because I think both printing and calico printing by the mid 19th century were very large scale. Calico printing presses were as big as modern newspaper presses. Those enormous machines that fly at the speed of sound.
Yeah, it's interesting because I am sort of familiar with some of the professions described within, and it's interesting to see the differences in how they did things compared to later on. I'm not even talking about today, where you have, industrialization on a different level, but how it describes certain things. For example, like the fact that they had pin makers, right?
Yeah.
Now, you never touch pins. It's just metal goes into a machine and pins come out the other way. But it was a very intricate process back then, and someone had to do it. So it's interesting, and all of those many of those professions were codependent. You just couldn't just go somewhere and buy the stuff you need. You had to go to the person who makes the things you need.
And you as a tool maker, could you make a pin actually? Do you know how? Is it like an obvious thing?
I could, but I wouldn't make it the same way as they did. I now have a lathe at my disposal, so it's easy to do that. I have access to the internet, and to whatever piece of knowledge I might be missing, I can easily find. Whereas back then you needed to spend years and years being an apprentice until you were trusted to do the job.
I see the mark on the last.
Okay. Yeah. Now you tilted it and it
Can you show it a bit closer, because I can't really see it? Oh yes, good.
It doesn't want to focus. Yeah.
No, it's okay. We can. Yeah. Now it's visible.
So what's about the mark?
What do you mean? It's my insignia. Let's say it's my initials combined into one.
How? Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. How did you choose it? How did you?
It's K and delta joined together.
Oh, okay. Now I see it. Now I see it. What's about the choice of the marble paper, both for the papers and for the box?
I wanted something fairly classic. This is a very classic pattern, and I wanted to look to work well with the terracotta, you could call it. I guess it's a bit more on the brown side, with the leather, so that they complement each other and it looks pleasing to the eye. Another thing is that if you squint a bit, it can remind you a pattern on textiles. So there's a bit of that as well.
Okay.
And there's also another small detail. I always, in slipcases, I always put a dot on one of the lips that to indicate. I don't know if you can see. There's a gold dot on the. Yeah, there. That's to indicate the top side, because the slipcase is custom made to fit the binding, and the binding is not always 100% symmetrical. So you need to sort of adjust for that.
What kind of measures do you have to take from a book?
What kind of
measures? Like
a lot.
I mean, like with a human, it would be breadth of shoulders, etc.
Yeah.
You're basically making a custom-made suit, bespoke suit for a book. How many measurements? And
I have to measure basically thickness, height, and width, and I have to do that in many different points. Like, 4, maybe even 5 different points, and you have to be really precise, because 0.5 millimeter off means the binding will not come out the slipcase. If you're 0.5 mil off in any of those things, and it's very tricky, especially when working with old bindings, which are irregular in some ways, because even with the efforts I might put in while working on it to make everything even, there's still things that might be asymmetrical, as I said. For example, I was working with a book that had a lot of folded maps in it. It was a nightmare because the book wouldn't close, in a perfect straight way. It was very thick in one end, very thin in the other end, and I had to make a case for it. And that was very difficult to work with.
Is that why really old bindings sometimes had clasps on them for?
Not really. The usual reason old bindings had clasps is because they were often, especially if you go way back, they were often parchment binding. So the pages were from parchment, and parchment has a lot of tension to it. It wants to open. The book wants to stay open. It doesn't want to stay shut. So the clasps help with that.
Pasha, maybe we should switch to the photos you have in your folder, because they will probably be of a bit higher resolution compared to video stream that comes.
I think so.
Yeah, it was definitely fun to unbox it and to touch it and to to open it and to explore it. Yeah.
Sorry. Go on. I have a comment for this photo.
Yeah. Let's start. Let's start with the comments.
So one thing you can see is that the how do you call them? The sewing stations, the 3 sewing stations, are not placed again symmetrically. I had to follow basically. Here's the thing: when you're working on an old book, the book already has holes or saw marks from the previous binding. So you can either choose to ignore them and make your own, or you can use them for your binding. And there's a bit of you have to weigh the situation, because if you ignore them, then you're introducing damage basically to the book. If you have to make new saw marks, then you remove material and you harm the book in a way. So you have to decide whether the previous binder did a job that's very not helpful, let's say it, that's very wrong, or it's very removed from what you're planning to do.
That's very polite way to put it.
Yeah, I'm trying. You see, I'm trying to walk on eggshells here.
It's like talking to a British guy,
Or if you'll just use them and have the result that you have here, that you have a bit of an asymmetry. In this case, the issue was purely, aesthetical, and not so much because after the leather goes on, it's not that visible, and the marks are not that far off from, it's not where I would put them, but they're not terrible. So I opted to not introduce more damage to the binding than necessary. Mm-hmm. And this is the slipcase while it's in progress, while in the making. So here I'm doing a test fit when the parts are cut to size and the leather goes on. Yes, that's important.
Your card. That's a nice touch. Yeah.
Because there is for everyone out there who plans to commission or buy a bound book, there's a specific way that you have to open it for the first time in order to relax the binding's spine. If you don't and you are not careful, you might crack the spine, and that will create many problems. And also, in many cases, people think that's the binder's fault, that they did a shoddy job, whereas it has to do with how you handle the binding. So the way to properly open a binding is to place it on a flat surface with the spine down, and let the boards fall down, and then start opening 5 pages from one side, 5 pages from the other side, until you reach the center, and do that 2 or 3 times to relax the structure. Oh, yeah, here you can see.
We're moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now we can see really well those loom weights, and technically this is tooling, yes.
Yes, it is. It is tooling in blind. Blind are the dark lines or the dark elements, where you basically introduce moisture to the binding. You add water, and then it gets absorbed, and then you basically, with a slightly hot tool, not very hot, you darken the leather by, and I'm gonna put quotation marks on this, by cooking it. So boiling the water with a hot tool creates this effect. I'm exaggerating in order, for your viewers to understand how it works. It's not exactly like that. And the other elements are in gold foil.
We have,
and the title?
We have, sorry, I'll interrupt you. We have Timothy from Vietnam, from Timothy Binder, joining us. Hello, Dimitris, Stepan, and Pavel. Hi, Timothy. Nice to have you.
Greetings, Timothy.
So, what's next? Maybe you can zoom in a little bit on this.
Oh, I can, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, it's difficult a bit. And what is the font here?
The font is the only typeface I had until recently, at least. It's called the Acropole, basically.
It has some very aggressive serifs, especially in the
yes.
F and E. Yeah.
Yes, I have a preference nowadays for more modern, less serify typefaces, let's say. But I didn't want to use something that modern on this binding.
And this is the darkening you were talking to?
Yes.
Mm.
And also on the vertical lines as well, because there are contrast.
Yes.
Lines are either if the round pieces are blind tooled, then the lines are gold tooled, and vice versa. So if you see Pasha, there.
That's a very nice detail. I didn't notice that when we were looking for the camera. Yeah, this was a good idea to see close-ups.
Timothy wrote, the binding is so beautiful as usual. That's from Timothy.
Thank you very much.
And how are those gaps kept? I mean, on the bottom, on the top, you have the same size of gap, which
that's magic.
That's let's call it magic. It's a struggle. It's a struggle because, as I said, if you get them I actually, like a couple of months ago, I had to remake a case entirely because I did everything. I thought I did everything properly, and it turned out that the gap was not sufficient. And so the book could go in, but very it was very tight. And the opposite has happened as well. To have a book that's too loose, that has that the gaps are right when it comes to the thickness, but not when it comes to its height. So I had to remake that again. It's sometimes, especially with a small binding like this one, you have to be precise to like 0.3 of a millimeter. That's the smallest I count dimensions when making slip cases, like 0.3 of a millimeter.
And how do you reliably measure that?
Yeah. I don't know how to answer that. By eyeballing it, I guess, as reliable as it gets. I think the way I do it is mostly by how much I sharpen the pencil that I make marks with, because I have calipers, and I can get it quite precise as long as I don't use the pencil very aggressively.
Timothy wrote, I strongly believe that creating a simple decoration is harder than, well, I guess fully covering it with fluorons or something.
That's an interesting comment, because that's the main thoughts that I wanted to share about this binding, and it's nice that we have the full view now. So when I started working on it, and you told me that we could maybe not when I finished it, and you told me that maybe we could do an unboxing. I sat down and thought about why is it that I enjoy working on small bindings so much? Because I have a strong preference, and they're not very common, especially nowadays. They used to be much more common, books in small format back then. And so this is relevant. It mostly has to do with the design part of the bookbinding process, not as much the structural part. I enjoy binding a large book when it comes to its structural features and the process around that. But I think it mostly has to do with what I've come to think of as, let's call it, the tyranny of empty space. So what's that? Is that and it's similar to the comment Timothy made, is that when you have a normal sized binding or a large one, no matter what decoration I do, I always feel as if the space left empty is judging me. Let's say it's saying, why this arrangement? Why am I left out? So there's something like an incentive that I must do something with the entirety of the space available, with the entirety of the available surface. Obviously, there's nothing like that, and there's no. I don't have to do that, but I feel like that. I don't know why. So when you go, however, to a small binding, everything looks neat, and I have a tendency to do minimalistic designs. Not minimal per se. It's not that I think. It's not that it comes natural to me. It's just where I end up, because I like more abstract designs. I like symbolism, and usually that doesn't lead to a very sumptuous decoration, with a lot of onlays and elaborate patterns. So when you work with a small surface or relatively small, everything looks neat, and no matter what you do, you don't end up with huge amounts of empty space that feel like they're swallowing your design. That that it gets lost in them. And here's another thing as well, that every little detail is highlighted on a small binding. You might have a very beautiful decorative tool, for example, with its twirls and fleurons and whatnot. If you place it on a big binding, if it's relatively on its own, then all you see is empty space, basically. If you place it in an intricate design with other decorative tools, it gets lost. It's when you see the binding, you don't see the beautiful tool. You see, and I'm going to be a bit harsh on this one, because you see visual noise. And disclaimer, I really, really enjoy beautiful bindings with elaborate patterns. I'm not saying that they're not beautiful. I'm just describing how it feels to my eyes when I try to do that. So when you have a small binding and you use a beautiful decorative tool, it's the same as when you place a diamond on a velvet display case. It feels like it's showcased, it's appreciated, instead of being lost in a bigger design with a lot of other details around it. And it sort of feels that way too in this case. Imagine if this binding was 3-4 times the size and you only had those lines. It would feel empty, right? Whereas now, at least to me, it doesn't. It feels like the lines, the geometry of them, the empty space, the placement of the title, everything sort of creates a result that works, or at least to my eyes, it works. Let me know your thoughts as well.
And also, geometry of it is pretty complicated, despite being so small. I've been looking at how these loom weights are exactly aligned, well, pretty much exactly on a line, but these angles are not. I mean, they go something like that, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. I imagine the threads hanging from a curved surface. You wouldn't have that in most weaving looms, but I think that's the case with some sock looms. I'm not sure, but it looked nice. It introduced sort of a visual twist to the whole thing, which is mostly straight lines and angular details.
And would you say the whole aesthetic harks back to, say, 1910s, 1920s? I think there is something of Art Deco in the overall effect.
You caught me. I'm a huge fan of Art Deco, and what you said is actually a huge compliment. Thank you, because I didn't. It wasn't on purpose. I didn't think of that I'm trying to do something a bit Art Deco-ish. So the fact that it has a bit of an Art Deco vibe, I'm really happy about that. Another thing, and you might find it interesting, Pavel, is could you stay on this picture? No, the one showing the front covers.
Sorry, yes.
No, okay, no problem. So the spacing on the lines on the top side of the binding, right? And as they go a bit towards the side, Yes, yes. A small detail about that. I tried a couple of iterations when it comes to that spacing, and nothing looked right. And then I thought, what if I tried the Fibonacci sequence? And lo and behold, it looked quite right.
So this is 1358.
8, yeah, and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. So if you extend the last line, I actually had to place the template, the paper template of the design at the center of my bench, and the edge of the last line, yeah, if you extend it, it almost went beyond the bench. Yes, exactly. For those that don't know,
1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and that one goes way off. Yeah.
exactly, and it's not, the one is at the spine, so it's even 13, and we end up with 13 and how much? 21. So it was like 50 or 60, maybe even more centimeters away from the binding, the very edge, if you had to make them all in a straight line. Fibonacci numbers are what Pavel described. So you add numbers like in this sequence: 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 1 is 3, 3 + 2. So each time you add the result to the previous number, and that might sound, like very arbitrary, but Fibonacci numbers, the Fibonacci sequence is everywhere around us in nature, everywhere. The most common example is the Nautilus shell. Most people have seen an image of one. If you cut it in half, the internal structure is a logarithmic spiral, which is what you get if you try to visually represent the Fibonacci sequence.
And I think why it works visually is another mathematical property of it. If you take those numbers, so again, what are we having? 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, etc. And you look at how they relate to each other, like 13 divided by 8, 8 divided by 5, 5 divided by 3. The further you go up, the closer this ratio is to golden ratio. Like 13 over 8 is almost golden ratio. And the further you go, and also it means that these two relate to each other about the same way as the next two, and this one. So it gets gradually bigger.
But the correlation remains the same, even if it's expanded and enlarged. Yes. So it's people out there, if you're struggling with a design and you don't know how to arrange certain details, Fibonacci sequence,
Artists have been using it for like what, 2000 years?
Good advice. I'll read a couple of comments and we'll continue looking at the photos. There are some more photos, right? So we have Yarn Tracker. It's definitely magical, beautiful work. Thank you. Well, thank you for watching. And Timothy also wrote a couple more comments. Yes, abstract design and simplicity is not easy to get. Well done, my dear. I love the place you put the title to. It's very modern.
Thank you.
This, yes.
What was the hardest part of this project?
The hardest part of this project,
technically or design-wise, what was the toughest moment?
I think it was coming up with the design, because I was stuck for quite some time. because I was trying to force myself to think of something related to bookbinding. And then I made a shift thinking that I can depict something inspired by another trade, but the result, if depending on how I arrange the design, the result will look like, a classic binding, or, what in the end, it's, as I said, it's this is a symbolic representation of a loom. It's not depicting a loom. So that freed me up to go ahead and think of something along these lines.
And it could also have referenced not a loom but a sewing station.
Maybe,
yes.
It's open for interpretation. But also, I guess, because the book has so many topics within its covers and so many crafts listed there, it can probably also. So, from one point of view, it gives you the choice, but then you have the choice and you have to make the choice. So it may be a bit too much.
Yeah. Sort of. In the end, I wanted the binding to look nice and to do something interesting without stressing myself too much. Because if this was supposed to be, let's say, a fun project for both sides.
Yeah.
So I basically switched to what I enjoy doing the most, playing with representing stuff in a way that's sort of removed, sort of from a different lens. So as you said, something that's open to interpretation. When someone looks at this, they might think, what am I seeing? What am I looking at? They might actually discover that there's a correlation between the spacing of the lines, or they might be able to figure out that, this is threads with weights. They might just think that, okay, it looks nice. There's a certain use of geometry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the end, that's the goal, because it's easy to get too caught up in trying to do certain things and forget to enjoy yourselves as makers sometimes. And I try to keep that in mind while working on this project.
Can I stop sharing now?
Are there no photos? I wanted to ask if there are photos, close-up photos of the endbands, and I wanted to ask about the endbands. What's happening there?
I don't think there is one of the endbands.
Yeah,
the endbands are handmade, hands-on.
But you can show on the finished product.
Yeah, but the quality and if you could stop sharing, I'll show it.
Try it. Let's see how it goes.
It's a bit. The quality is not the best, unfortunately. Let me see if I can zoom out. Yeah. So here we are.
I tried to match them with the marbled paper I used for the end papers and the slipcase.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a dark green with a yellow.
Yeah, it wouldn't focus so close.
It's a single core. It's a single core headband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really sharp. It doesn't seem to be in this blurry video, but it's really sharp when you look close.
Thank you.
Anyway, Let me see. Maybe on this camera it will be a bit better. Let me check. By the way, I can show it to you over here. No, it still wouldn't focus.
No.
No.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is. Yeah. And
Let's
Stepan
see.
is quite an aficionado of endbands.
I always love to explore them. Yeah.
Dimitris, do you have your preferences? Do you have strong opinions on how endbands should be and shouldn't be done?
That's interesting. I enjoy, a nicely made soon endband, Sean endband, as much as the next guy, especially, very sharp French double core endbands. But the more the time passes, the more I find myself going away from them. First, because it kind of seems like it's expected of me, so fuck the police. I don't know. And the and the other thing is that leather endbands, or endbands made from different materials, first, they're unexpected, and secondly, they offer more space to do stuff. For example, to actually tool on them, or to add some weird element. And since it's a small detail on the binding, it's interesting, for someone to, while examining the binding, to notice it and say, oh, okay, that's something new, that's unexpected. So I'm trying, actually, right now, I'm also trying to find new materials to make endbands with, unusual textiles or leathers. But it's tricky because, they're so small. So it has to be something that shows. There are some very, very interesting materials that, due to the scale of an endband, they don't really look like something. So it's tricky. I would like to even be more daring to do something that's and I've had that discussion with Kalin from Stepan. He does, he's quite the pioneer on the endband front. He does really, really experimental and weird things. So I would also like to explore more unconventional structures, but I'm slowly, let's say, getting there. Don't know when or how that will happen. But for now, I enjoy, the real estate that, for example, a leather endband gives you, and the opportunities, the creative opportunities. Obviously, though, I won't use it on everything. As I said, for example, I'm working on a 10-volume set, which is based on 19th century literature of sorts, and I'll obviously use something more conventional there.
Well, your aesthetic and Kalin's are pretty much opposite of each other. You wouldn't call, I think, any of his works minimalistic.
Oh yeah, in that regard, yeah, you can say that. But I think his bindings are amazing, and the thing is that complexity in his designs is a result of different pursuits. It's not complexity for the sake of complexity. It's the result of having specific goals that have to do with his inspiration and the things he aspires to explore.
And
and
I also think he's a storyteller first and foremost.
And that's that's I guess why we see eye to eye, because I feel like a storyteller as well. I've written about it in some of my posts too, and that's one of the reasons that I don't like pictorial bindings, and trying to represent something exactly as it is in the book, or to create an image that's realistic in a sense, because you are missing on an opportunity to use the binding to expand the story, to expand its content, basically as a creator. There's a book, and you have a structure that allows you to play with the story, to approach it from different perspectives, from different angles, to bring it to new dimensions, basically. Because when we have a book, when we're reading it, everything is in our mind, and you have the chance to bring that in some way into the real world through what you do with the binding as an object. Why go for a strict visual representation of something? That's not to say that it can't be done very beautifully, but that's why I'm more drawn to binders who are a bit unconventional, let's say, for example, like Kalin.
Pasha wanted to discuss another binding of yours, another recent binding of yours, if you are ready to do that. But before that, I wanted to address our viewers, and if you still have questions about the first binding we discussed today, please post them, because we'll switch to the second binding, and then we'll probably end this live stream at some moment in the future after we discuss the second binding. So if you still have any questions, if you have any new questions about the second binding, please post them. We will pass them to Dimitris. And also, let me see, Timothy wrote some more stuff, and I'm not sure to which it was, because he writes totally agree, and I'm not sure which moment was that. Technically, I can get by practice. Technical can get by practice, can be hard on some first bindings, be easier on many later bindings, but design is always hard in every binding. Every time we need to do it from zero. Oh, okay. I guess that was during the moment we discussed the hardest part of this project. So yeah, if any of our viewers have any questions, please post them. Even if you're watching a recording, maybe you can post your questions, and I will ask Dimitris to answer them later. So
yeah, sure.
Are you ready to discuss this binding with tiling?
Can I share your Instagram images? Yeah. Because I was extremely excited to see this, as it's this particular type of tiling has been a hot topic for a couple of years. So tell us how it got to you and what it is we're looking at.
Well, what you're looking at is a rendition, a design based on what is called the Einstein tile. And what is the Einstein tile? Is
nothing to do with Albert, as far as I remember. Nothing to do with Albert Einstein.
No, not specifically. I think it's just a nickname.
It means one stone, so one tile.
Oh, Einstein, German, in German.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I didn't know that. That's interesting. So it makes even more sense. It's a shape that allows you to cover an entire surface without gaps and without having the pattern repeating in exactly the same way, no matter in which direction you expand, you cover using this shape. And it's been something that mathematicians have been looking for centuries, basically, because you have examples of tiles that go back to, I think, the 17th, 16th century, where it's apparent that they were trying to come up with specific shapes to do that, and more specifically with fewer shapes to achieve that. And the reason this was the design for this binding is because this is a book on the principles of political economy, and the historian of economic thought that commissioned me to make this binding, Konstantinos Repapis, believes, and he recently made a presentation on this, that there are correlations between the tiling problem and the way periodicity or the lack of periodicity works. And there are similarities between that and how certain schools of economic thought work. And so this design and the way the Einstein tile works, which is quasi-periodic, has correlations with the economic thought of Robert Malthus, one of the first Cambridge economists. And so, as I say in the post, we were thinking about using how are the two tiles called? Penrose tiles. So, which are two very specific shapes that achieve the same result. But as the time went by and we were thinking on that, he realized that they've discovered the Einstein tile, and so that introduced a twist and an opportunity to use that. And as far as I know, it's the first time something like that has been used on a binding design. The golden line, by the way, I don't know if you could go to the photo that shows the entire binding.
Oi.
There.
Here.
So the golden line that stretches across the covers illustrates that there's no periodicity. No matter how much you extend that line, you won't find a tile that is placed in exactly the same way as another one. Or you won't find a sequence that's the same as in any other part. I don't know, Pavel, if you have more to say on the matter, since you're more knowledgeable.
Well, I did study these aperiodic or quasi-periodic tilings some 15, 20 years ago as a student and PhD student. And you mentioned Roger Penrose and his two tile solutions to this problem. The curious thing is, some 10 years after he discovered that pattern, actual crystals, quasi-crystals, were found in nature that have that particular non-repeating pattern of atoms. And there's a very good chance that something like this thing can be generated in laboratory too, and will have new applications. And also, this whole thing was discovered by an amateur, a very interesting British guy who just loves tiles. Like he likes playing with shapes, putting them next to each other. And when I saw an interview with him, he still does that. Like he made a few more discoveries since that one. So now he's a published mathematician with a number of papers. And only a few years back, he was just playing with cardboard pieces, which I love a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I I always enjoy, for example, when reading about similar things in astronomy. There's been many discoveries that have been made by people, just hobbyists, going through photos and data on their own, taken by NASA. And you know, the amount of data we have is so huge that there's a lot of things that get discovered 10, 20, 30 years later, even though we had the photos and the data all along. And it's quite interesting and you know, and fun to see that regular people who are not scientists are able to contribute in a meaningful way.
And it's interesting that it's only become possible with too many people, which is what Malthus was warning against. Wasn't he the one who said that when we get to 1 billion, it's the end of civilization because there is absolutely no way Earth could support that many people?
I can't confirm that. Yeah, I'll have to ask Repopis for that. I remember a correlation between the size of population and certain outcomes, but I don't remember, you know, the specifics. The
specific numbers I'm sort of the rough ballpark figure I'm giving, but Malthusian thought is that, like, you know, when we were kids, everybody was saying that people should stop reproducing, yeah, because there are too many of them, and they were often quoting this Malthus guy. So and yet here we are, advancing science, advancing mathematics. More people means more people doing art, not just science. And I think overall the guy was wrong.
Well, independently of what Malthus said, because as I said, I'm not familiar with the exact details. This is an interesting topic because, you know, thoughts about the population being too large. Well, there's obviously some credibility to them when it comes to various parameters of life. But the thing is that as people in the past couldn't be aware of the advancements that would be made in, for example, the production of food or the availability of energy or, you know, clean water, etc., etc. The same goes for us. So there's a lot of people saying that, you know, once we reach X number of people on the planet, we're doomed. We have no idea how things will be by then. Obviously, we have to be considerate in how we spend or allocate our resources, but we might discover materials that will allow us to create megastructures. The cities, unlike we've seen, we might be able to colonize, you know, the solar system, and the number of people alive will not be an issue at all. We have no idea.
Can I stop sharing this, Stepan?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, there was a problem.
There was a problem. Who had a problem?
Okay, my AI thinks it's called Stepan.
Yeah. So we've got no more questions, but still, it was a fun, great talk, and I should say that this first project and this first partnership, I think it was a complete success. and I enjoyed the whole, project, how it went in communication with Dimitris. I specifically told Dimitris not to send me any photos of the finished project right from the start, because I wanted it to be a surprise. But still, of course, we had some communication. We discussed some of the things and some of the steps and stuff. So it was it was great to do this, and I hope that I will have opportunity, or iBookBinding will have opportunity to repeat the process with some other binder in 2025 or maybe 2026. We'll see how it goes, because, well, I didn't arrange a project with anyone yet. I had some preliminary discussions and contacts, but it may be a bit too late for some binders to take an order for this year already. So we'll see how it goes. But then,
do you have a particular book in mind?
Well, I have a couple of books in mind, and I also thought about when working with the bookbinders not from the UK, or from, let's say, from not from the countries which are considered major bookbinding countries, like UK, France, or Germany, or maybe United States, to ask these bookbinders to look for some local tutorials, maybe from the 19th century, related to book arts or bookbinding or something like that, and maybe, for example, a Polish tutorial or something. So that was one of the ideas. So I hope to continue with the same theme, with the same topic, with the same relevance for bookbinding and book arts. But
didn't you have a number of those already? I remember something in Romanian was in your collection. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I have some stuff. I have some resources for that, some reserves.
Keeping it a secret.
Yeah. We'll see. I'll announce it when it starts brewing. But now it's too early. I have some some lever here, because some space to operate, because technically I received this binding in 2025. So if I receive the next binding in 2026, it will fit the yearly scheme.
Indeed.
But yes, so it worked out perfectly. Timothy wrote, "It is a nice discussion. It's so much fun. Thank you all." Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting.
Thank you.
To everybody, thank you for joining us. And if you are watching this video in the future, still thank you for watching it. It's nice to have you here. As I mentioned before, please check the links in the description. There are some links to Dimitris, where you can find work made by Dimitris, his website and Instagram account. But also please check the link to our Patreon account, because getting money from our patrons is something that allows us to sometimes do some research, and sometimes do some editing, sometimes pay for some additional work, which is crucial to us. So also subscribe to us, and share this video with a person who you think will enjoy this sort of discussions, and this sort of bindings, and this sort of art as well. So I guess that's it for today. Pasha, did I say everything right? We have Aine,
The usual.
Okay, I wouldn't butcher the name, so I'm sorry about that. But the comment is just beautiful, Dimitris, and ingenious. By the way, talking about ingenious and talking about storytelling in Dimitris' work, we discussed that topic a while ago with Dimitris on our podcast, like
different
4 years ago or something, 5 years ago, when we discussed a couple of his bindings, where he inserts some hidden things within the binding structures that can be explored. So
layers of meaning.
Yeah. I highly recommend watching this video and other videos with Dimitris as well, if you have time. If you don't have time, you can do that next week. So
thank you guys for having me, and it was a pleasure making this binding for you.
Great. Great. So pleasure for everyone. I hope even for Pavel, who is sort of on the side of this project, but still. As usual, we'll stay for a bit longer, for something like 30 seconds, while the stream drops on Facebook and YouTube. But we are going to have a talk with Kate Holland later this month. We don't have a date yet. Well, I hope we will have, but we plan to have it and to discuss. It would be the 5th or 4th. It would be the 4th of the Booker Prize bindings from 2024. Kate was one of the bookbinders who made one of the 6 bindings, and there are 2 other people remaining, and I'm not sure if we would be able to have them on our live stream. But we also have some other ideas of what to do. I hope we'll have a live class at some moment, as we did with Tom McEwen, with some other bookbinder. And yeah, so stay tuned, subscribe, and we'll update you soon on our next live stream. Let me end the stream, and then we will be